Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we talk about all things fandom on this channel and we talk about them in a positive way. If that's something that appeals to you, you know you've come to the right place. This is Sci-Fi Sunday on this channel, where we talk about all things sci-fi, fantasy, and comic book related. And today we have to address some recent rumors about the future of Doctor Who. Where will Doctor Who end up? What streaming service? What platform? How will Doctor Who proceed in the future? Well, let's jump into everything we know so far. So if you're a Doctor Who fan, you may have wondered where exactly the future of Doctor Who is going to go after this season. The season left us with a bit of a cliffhanger and made it to where we're not sure where it's going to go from there. But also there's been talk that it may not even remain at Disney. That's right, the rumor is that Disney might be done with Doctor Who after this season. And that keeps coming up over and over and over. But now we have a little bit of an idea, but no official announcement has been made. But that doesn't mean that outlets haven't started to report on it. And one of the biggest, most reliable outlets for Doctor Who is, of course, Doctor Who TV. The article from Doctor Who TV says, for some time now, the Doctor Who rumor mill has been churning with the speculation that the Disney deal is over. More recently, talk shifted to the possibility of a new streaming partner stepping in. While nothing has been confirmed, it raises a fascinating question. If it doesn't stick with Disney, what platform does it go to next? And then it tries to look at different places it could go. So one of the places that it talks about is Netflix. It says Netflix might seem like the most obvious choice. Netflix might seem like the most obvious choice because you're looking at Netflix. Netflix has a tendency to show older stuff. And at one point they did show a lot of Doctor Who stuff back in the day, but that has ceased. Now, what makes them not a viable option, if you're asking me, is the simple fact that they don't commit to anything for more than a couple seasons, with a few minor exceptions. It seems like a lot of Netflix shows don't last more than 2 or 3 seasons and then they're done. Or Netflix has a bad habit of continuing the trend that's been going on with Doctor Who that a lot of fans want to end. And that is taking a year or 2 in between seasons so that people kind of forget about it and they forget how they're feeling about the show and what excited them about the last season. And they end up having to binge watch that entire last season that they watched just to get back into the groove of what's to come. And Netflix is just as guilty of that as Disney has become. So I don't think that they're a really good platform for them to be on. However, that's not their only choice. It goes on to say that Amazon Prime is another option and a more plausible fit. It says it has already shown a clear appetite for backing a large-scale British IPs, having secured The Rings of Power, James Bond, and is launching the Grand Tour. It also invests heavily in high-profile, fan-focused series such as Fallout, Gen V, and The Boys. Now, that is a good choice. I do agree. And The Boys has been on for quite a few seasons, and sure, you have to wait a little bit, but it doesn't seem like we've waited for The Boys to come back out, not the way we've had to wait for Doctor Who. So could this be a more plausible fit after all? Sure, it could be, and Amazon Prime is a good place to bring something like that because it does garner a lot more attention and keep things a lot more focused. At least that's my opinion, because it seems like they do have shorter waits in between the seasons of their shows. So their shows are more accessible, I feel, to fans, and that might be a better fit than, say, Netflix, that does have a tendency of making us wait. I mean, just look at Stranger Things. They're going to split it up into 3 different sections, and this is after making us wait, what, 2 years? Almost 2 years? We've had to wait a long time for the final season of Stranger Things. And it's not any different than what Disney has been doing and what other platforms were doing with Doctor Who. If we could get a Doctor Who that comes within a year's time every year, it would be something to look forward to. And I think you get more fans if it just is something that you don't have to wait 2 or 3 years for the next season. Then you have HBO Max. They said HBO Max currently holds the US streaming rights to Doctor Who's 2005 to 2022 era. The deal is said to expire soon, and speculation about what follows is growing. Okay, so this is good for HBO Max because they are getting a lineup of different projects. They're sort of trying to continue their library, and they have access to those Doctor Who episodes. So this really does present them with an opportunity to keep those Doctor Who episodes in their library, as well as give fans a new one. And if you've seen any of the HBO Max shows that are originals, you might wait a year at most for them to come back on. But in some cases, that's just because of some sort of delay. It seems like there's not nearly the wait time on HBO Max in between a series and its next season. And I love that for them. I think the HBO Max is an excellent place for Doctor Who to go. Not only does it hold those places in the library, but it would really help the platform itself. It goes on to say about HBO Max that it's primarily US focused, and any future involvement would need to assure that the BBC and UK audiences remain at the forefront. So there is a risk that the show could skew too heavy towards a more adult storytelling in an attempt to fit the HBO brand. I actually disagree with this. I think that HBO Max would honor it, especially if you're continuing to bring in the BBC as a partner and have them actually continue to be involved and continue to write these episodes, because that's really what you need to do. Have the people that have been writing Doctor Who continue to write Doctor Who and not try to give it to an American audience. That's a death sentence in itself. To bring in people that don't understand Doctor Who or want to give it a more American vibe. You don't need to give Doctor Who an American vibe. He fits because he fits. And HBO Max should know this from the success of them streaming the parts of Doctor Who that they do have in their library. They know that this brings in numbers, so I don't think that they would really stray from it too much. I don't think they would stray from it at all. Then it brings us to Apple TV. Now it says Apple TV may not have the volume of content as the rivals, but it does have an often highly acclaimed library, with shows like Silo, For All Mankind, Foundation, and Severance. Apple has shown a clear interest in thought-provoking, high-concept science fiction. So that's great. I don't know that I see Apple as the main place where I would want to see Doctor Who. However, you know, if it's done right and you have Apple Plus and you can watch it, that's great. They need to have a platform that people can go and watch it on. Maybe they share it with BBC and people can watch it on BBC America or watch it on BBC streaming platforms of any sort of British platform might need to be involved there. But the same can be said for any of the platforms we're talking about. Hopefully, people are not just subject to watch it on that platform. They have to have that deal in place for other countries. And I think that's a given. Most platforms have a deal with other countries where you can watch on a different platform if you don't have that one. Disney Plus even made a thing about some of the shows that they have on their platform are available on another one in different countries. And I've seen this throughout a lot of different platforms where you do have that opportunity to stream it in different countries on whatever platforms and streaming services are available to you. And I think that's just logic. I think that's the way that would go. So having it on Apple TV isn't a bad thing. It's not like it would be the end of the show if they put it there and it didn't gain the traction. However, I do agree that Apple doesn't have the numbers that some of the other streaming platforms would have. So would it suffer a little bit? Quite possibly it would. People may not watch if it goes to Apple, but the same can be said about any streaming service that people don't have. A lot of people will buy a streaming service just for one show, and when the season's over, they will quit their subscription and then go back and watch it again when it comes back on. Just re-up that subscription, watch it, and then go about your business. And I think that's kind of what is happening. But if you have the entire library, if Apple suddenly got the entire library and people wanted to go back and watch everything, then that might be a plus for them. That might be a way that they could succeed in the Doctor Who streaming war here that's going on. That might be a way that they could possibly get the show and keep fans interested. At first glance, Doctor Who's madcap tone might not seem to match Apple's prestige-driven output. And that could be a strength. They're saying that basically Apple has taken chances, and I would agree there. Apple has taken chances, so we'll have to see what types of chances Apple would be willing to take if they try to get Doctor Who. So then, of course, it has to ask us about other platforms, and other platforms, of course, are viable options. They talk about Peacock and Paramount emerging as platforms that are still working to establish themselves outside of North America. Acquiring Doctor Who could raise their international profiles considerably, but visibility and support would be crucial. On smaller platforms, there's a risk the show could be sidelined or lost in a sea of under-promoted content. I agree and disagree with that, because yes, if you have shows that are Peacock originals or Paramount Plus originals, then yes, they're going to promote those. But I think if they have an IP that they understand is big and international, they're going to want to promote that majorly. Like, how could you sit there and go, I'm going to sideline this for this content that's an original Peacock or Paramount Plus show that people may not even watch? Like, there's Peacock shows and Paramount Plus shows that aren't even airing on any of the networks or have been taken off the networks and gone strictly to that for a season. And I've seen them 2 to 3 years later pop up on the actual network. Like, when they don't have anything else to do, they take some original programming off of their streaming and put it on in place of some show that got canceled. And then they hope that it catches on and people are watching it. Well, now you're 2, maybe 3 years behind on this. 2, 3 seasons behind on this entire series. And how do you go forward with that? I don't see them promoting their original shows over something that they do know would be international. I think that they would know the difference there. I think that they would understand that in order to have something that is an international phenomenon like Doctor Who, that they would need to promote that they would need to get as many places to stream this, as many households to stream this as possible. So they would be trying to promote it if they had it. I think that honestly, a streaming service like Paramount Plus or Peacock might actually be the best place, only because they don't have that major international establishment. So they would want to establish that. They would want to get as much attention on their service as possible and say, this is where you're going to watch that. And I think that would be really, really good for them. The last option, of course, is could the BBC continue without a major streaming partner? It has done so in the past, but rising production costs, particularly with effects-heavy sci-fi, make external funding increasingly important. Without it, the fans might face even longer waits between the series, smaller episode counts, or maybe just specials and tighter budgets. Look, that's kind of where we're at now anyway. It seems like we're waiting forever for the next season of Doctor Who. It could actually prove to be a better option for them to go with a streaming service. I honestly do think that that is the wave of the future for a lot of networks, to just have that funding, to have that streaming backup in their costs, because it does allow for more money to come in and more opportunities to put out the show quicker with better effects and possibly have more episodes. But if you know streaming services and you know streaming shows, you pretty much are guaranteed an 8 to 12 episode count for most of them. And I think that's tragic, especially considering that seasons just keep getting shorter and shorter, it seems like, on every single platform, on every single network. And it used to be so much better, and seasons used to be so much longer. And now we're stuck with 8 to 12 episodes if we're lucky, and we have to wait another year. And in some cases, like when you're dealing with Doctor Who, another 2 to 3 years for another season. So it goes on to ponder the question about the future, whether it stays on Disney, moves to Amazon, HBO, Apple, or returns to the BBC. What comes next will depend on striking the right balance between identity, scale, and creative freedom. This is true. The right partner is important. So I ponder this question to you guys, my viewers. What streaming service do you think would be the best option for Doctor Who moving forward? Would you like to see it move on to another streaming service? Would you like to see it stay on Disney? What if Disney suddenly had rights to the entire Doctor Who library? Would that change the game a little bit? Would they be more invested in making the series faster for the fans who want it to come out faster? Or would they continue to make us wait the amount of time that it seems like we're going to have to wait in between seasons, with just a couple specials here and there to hold our attention? But that is where I'm going to leave it to you guys. I want to hear from you guys. Make sure you're leaving me that comment this time, because it's really important. We need to know where you think that Doctor Who should go. What streaming platform would you like to see it on? Do you think it should remain with Disney? What if Disney got its entire back library? Then all of a sudden, you'd have all the Doctor Who's, all the way from the classics all the way to modern day, on one streaming service. I definitely want that to happen. But what service do you think would benefit it the most? As fans of Doctor Who, this is a topic that I think every single Doctor Who fan has a comment about. So make sure you're sharing yours. As always, we want to hear from you guys, so make sure you are leaving us that comment in the comment box below, letting us know what you think. Don't forget to share this video with all of your friends. They're going to want to be a part of this crazy conversation we're having. And then make sure you're hitting that like button. It's free, it helps the channel, and we really do appreciate it. Then if you like this content, and all the positive fandom we bring, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Miko says we need more subscribers, and look at this face. You don't want to disappoint Miko. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell while you're there so you don't miss a single video we do. Then friends, at the end of the day, I know it, you know it, and Miko knows it. Fandom is family.